A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICANN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. We will start the day with the prelims theme of the day. We will take up geography. So, in geography, knowing the tributaries of various rivers is very important. But this is a very bulky exercise. At the same time, memorizing the different rivers and their tributaries, names, everything can be very confusing. So, today we'll just take up the Himalayan rivers, the various Himalayan rivers and their tributaries, and it is better if possible that you should know these tributaries based on whether they are right hand tributaries or right bank or left bank tributaries. So you have to know that. And secondly, also you have to know the important dams which have been constructed on these rivers. So the names of these dams and which river they have been constructed upon, and the tributaries of the Himalayan rivers, and also if possible whether it is a left bank tributary or a right bank tributary, you must know that. And secondly, also the important cities which are situated on the banks of these rivers. So you may get a match the following saying that some city is on this river, so this could be mismatched and you may go wrong if you are not really very sure about it. So these are the small things which you can memorize and do small in half an hour you can finish off these things, and they will really pay you a lot of fruits and dividends in the end if you really focus on these things. So do make a note of these rivers and tributaries and the dams on them, and also the important cities which are situated on the banks of these rivers. So now we will start with the topics of the day. When we were talking about the GST compensation issue, first topic of the day, which is related to fiscal Act, the Centre has promised to compensate the states for any loss in the revenue for a period of federalism. But now the Centre has come out with an explanation. Even yesterday we discussed about this because of the COVID pandemic, which the Centre says is an act of God, or which is called as the force majeure to compensate the states for any loss in the revenue for a period of 5 years. Based on that, the Centre is saying that the COVID pandemic was not predicted or anticipated like that. So this was an unfortunate because of the COVID pandemic circumstance, which the Centre says is an act of God, or which is called as the force majeure to the COVID pandemic and commercial consequent lockdown. Based on that, the Centre is saying that the scarcity in the financial resources due to which it will not be able to compensate. So this was an unfortunate for any loss in circumstance. So now the Centre has given the option to the states to borrow from the Reserve Bank of India for the shortfall in their consequent revenue due to the Centre poor collection under the scarcity in the financial resources, and also under which it will not be able to compensate the states. So for this any loss in doubts on the spirit of now the Centre has given the option to the states to borrow from the Reserve Bank of India for the shortfall in their further revenue due to and poor collection under the GST regime, and also discussion is because GST compensation this article has been written by this has cast doubts on the spirit of fiscal federalism, and Vijay Kelkar has played an important role in so now in this article we will recommendations for the GST and more deeply, and also has been one of the main purpose of including this article in today's discussion is because to make it this article has been written by an expert view which you can Vijay Kelkar the answers, and Vijay Kelkar has played an important role in coming out with issue the recommendations today for the GST. So now we will analyze the issues, and also has been one of those experts whose views you can quote in your answers to make it more recent authentic. Issue of GST compensation, so it is an expert view which you can quote in the answers. So that is the reason why we are discussing this fiscal federalism issue again today. So now we will analyze the issues now which are involved in the fiscal federalism, and the fact that this recent issue of GST compensation has given rise to some doubts related to the spirit of fiscal federalism. So in that, first is the options with the Centre. The Centre has more options when it comes to borrowing financial resources. So for instance, Centre can raise or mobilize financial resources, mobilize money by issuing sovereign bonds, and this the states cannot do. Similarly, the Centre can approach the international financial institutions more freely, while the states have a lot of restrictions in approaching the international financial institutions for mobilizing financial resources. So therefore, as there are more options with the Centre, it is the Centre that has to come forward, mobilize these resources, pass it on to the states, so that the states can not just tackle the pandemic but also focus on their long-term economic recovery. So this is precisely where the center has failed to mobilize the resources and devolve it to the states. Rather, it has held the states themselves responsible to mobilize the resources, while also realizing that it is the center which has more options and there are less options with the states to mobilize resources. The second is the interest rates. The center, being the central government, which represents the entire country, has more bargaining power. So, whenever it has to borrow at the international level or in various financial institutions, the center has, because of its better bargaining power, it is able to get the loans at much better interest rates, at lower interest rates compared to the states. So, whenever there is a need for financial resources, if the states borrow, then they will have to borrow at much higher interest rates, which will prove more costly for the states. Rather, what the center can do is the center can itself borrow at lower interest rates and then devolve it to the states. So, in spite of that, now the center has made the states themselves responsible for mopping up the finances. So, this is a second issue. The third is the credit rating. So, what these credit rating agencies are going to look at is what is the debt to GDP ratio of the country. How much debt has been raised? What is the public sector debt that is there in the country? For credit rating agencies, it does not matter whether this debt is the state government's debt or this debt is a central government debt. What the credit rating agencies are going to look at is the overall debt of the country as a percentage of the GDP. So, when this is considered, it doesn't matter for the center. It can itself raise more debt and then give it to the states, rather than giving it to the states only the responsibility to raise the debt. Whatever be the case, the debt to GDP ratio is going to increase, and that is what the credit rating agencies are going to look at. They won't look at the center and the state debt separately, but they are going to look at it as a combined debt of the country as a percentage of GDP. So it is not going to matter to the center whether the debt has been raised by the center or whether it has been raised by the states. It is one and the same. So in such a case, it is better for the center to raise the debt because it can get it at lower interest rates and it will have more options to raise the finances as well. So this is the third issue. The fourth is the macroeconomic stability. So when you talk of macroeconomic stability, the fiscal deficit, the level of inflation in the country, so what is the level of economic activity that is going on in the country, it is all the responsibility of the central government. So it is a central government now, in order to ensure this macroeconomic stability, to revive the demand and production in the economy and investment in the economy. It is a central government's responsibility to come out with fiscal stimulus to fuel the economy. So it is the primary responsibility of ensuring macroeconomic stability is with the center. So therefore, center should take that leadership role and that responsible role and help the states with the financial resources, which the center is now not doing. The next issue is the trust dent. More than all of the previously discussed issues, the most important issue is the dent in the trust. The states had trusted the center that the center is going to compensate the states for any shortfall in the revenue during the GST regime, that is in the beginning first 5 years till the GST regime stabilizes. But now, because of the pandemic, the center is reneging on its promise. It is going back on its promise, and it is breaking the trust which the states had imposed on center while they agreed for the constitutional amendment to bring about the GST regime. So this dent in the trust is going to prove more dangerous in the long run, because for any measure or for any development, it is a combined effort and the cooperation of the central and the state governments that is required. So now, with the dent in the trust that the states had imposed on the center, that the center will not leave their hands and will help them by passing on the financial resources till there is stability in the GST implementation. Now on this promise, the center is going back now. So this has dented the trust, and this is probably the most important implication and is going to have a bearing on the center-state fiscal relations, and even in the overall scenario of cooperative federalism, it is going to have a negative impact in the longer run. So this was the article on this analysis was on the implications on the fiscal federalism that this measure of the central government is going to have. Further, in this article itself, Vijay Kelkar he recommends some of the suggestions. He gives some suggestions which may be incorporated in the GST regime to make it more effective and productive. So let's look at those recommendations. The first important suggestion is to reduce the exemptions or the exceptions that have been created in the GST. So, not all the goods and services are under the ambit of GST. There have been exceptions that have been carved out for several goods and services which have been kept outside of the GST. This not just creates a lot of confusion among the population whether what is included in the GST and what is excluded. It is also going to create a lot of litigations over why something is included or excluded. So there will be a lot of litigations, lot of compliance issues. There may be a confusion that something is outside the GST ambit, and some person may not even comply with the GST obligations by misunderstanding that that particular good or service is outside the GST ambit. So it is going to create a lot of confusion in terms of compliance and lot of litigation and disputes. So it is better to keep these exceptions and simple and reduce it to the bare minimum. For instance, Vijay Kelkar says that let these exemptions be just limited to the food and to the medicines and such other extremely essential life-saving things. So only to those things let the GST exemptions be limited, and rest of the other goods and services should be brought in a phased manner under the ambit of GST regime. So this will improve the compliance. This will not create any confusion in the minds of population and will also reduce the disputes and litigation related to inclusion or exclusion of items under the GST. This is the first suggestion. Second is to have a moderate single rate. Now, if you see, there are several slabs, one at 5%, then 12, 18%, 28%, and 28% and surcharge. So this again has led to the issue of which good or service will fall under which tax slab. And there have been multiple revisions whenever the GST Council has met. So some of the items which were first at the higher slabs, they have been brought to the lower slabs and vice versa. So there have been shifts from one slab to another. So this again has created a lot of confusion in the minds of population. So this again is going to give rise to a lot of disputes and litigation. And when we are talking about one country, one tax, and we are talking about the purpose of GST being to improve the compliance and to also simplify the compliance, to reduce that compliance burden in the country, and to reduce that regulatory cholesterol which the economic survey talks about. So in such scenario, if we have multiple slabs, so that is again going to increase the compliance burden on the people and on the investors, and they will definitely think twice before investing in any part of the country. So in order to overcome this, what we need to have is a moderate single rate. So Vijay Kelkar recommends that this rate can be a 12% rate of GST, which should be the single rate, and all the goods and services, let them be taxed at this single rate of 12%. So he gives the comparison with Australia, which is also for the last 2 decades in Australia, they have a moderate and a single tax rate of just 10%. So this is not just easier for the administration to administer the implementation of GST, because they don't have to worry whether under which slab this item falls and whether that much rate of tax has been paid or not. Even from the administration point of view, a single rate is very easy to administer, and also for the people who want to fall within the tax regime, even for them this is very easy to comply with. So he takes the example of Australia and says for the last 2 decades they have had this single rate of 10%, and that has worked really well. So rather than having this complex system of multiple slabs of tax, we must have a single moderate rate, let's say 12%, so that it is both easier for the administration to administer the implementation of GST and also easier for the people to comply with the GST obligations. The third important recommendation made by Vijay Kelkar is the decentralization. Now, with the implementation of GST, the local governments have lost a lot of their revenue streams. So, because these revenue streams have been now merged with the GST, so they have lost a lot of financial resources which they could have otherwise collected as the local taxes. But however, we know how much responsibility and how many functions have been assigned to these local self-governing units, namely the Panchayati Raj institutions and the urban local bodies. So after the 73rd and the 74th Constitutional Amendment Act, they have been given a constitutionally listed set of duties and functions and roles and responsibilities that they will have to perform. So all of that requires good amount of financial resources and more autonomy. That financial autonomy is required for these grassroots level institutions. So what Vijay Kelkar says is these local self-governing institutions need to have that fiscal autonomy, and they need to be assigned a certain portion of the GST so that they are not dependent on the mercy of the state or the mercy of the center for that money which they require to do their constitutionally assigned work. So for this, he says that if 12% is the single rate of GST that is levied on all the goods and services, out of this, let 10% belong to the center and the states, and 2% should be completely devolved to the local bodies. So this will ensure that these local bodies have that fiscal autonomy, with the help of which they can implement whatever their functions they have been assigned. So these are the three important recommendations that the Vijay Kelkar has recommended in this particular article. So this you can also use it to say how in the future the implementation of GST can be improved. So if the question asks you to analyze the issues which the GST implementation is facing and also come out with suggestions to reduce such issues, you can quote these suggestions as well. So now we'll move on to the next topic. This is related to environmental protection. This is a part of your GS3 syllabus which talks about the environmental issues. So in this whole article, which was written by the former Minister of Environment and Environment in the UPA regime, that was Jayanti Natarajan. So she has written this article, and the main crux of the article, however, is just a few important data which you can quote in your answers. So this data is actually telling you that over a period of time, the environmental performance is actually reducing in India. That is, we are moving away from sustainable development, and in our quest for progress and development and growth, enhanced high rate of growth in the country, we have been exploiting the environmental resources, and that is leading to deterioration of the environment. So this article talks about India's ranking in the Environmental Performance Index. So instead of the ranking getting better and better over the years, this has only gotten worse and worse over the years. So this shows the scant regard that has been paid to the environmental conservation and protection, and how we are going for unsustainable utilization of resources and the exploitation of the environment. So this says that in 2006, our ranking on Environmental Performance Index was 118. In 2010, it became 123. In 2014, it became 155. And in 2018, it became 177. So now in 2020, ranking has also come, and that has put India at 168. So that has put India at 168. So you should just know this even from the prelims point of view. If there is a statement that on the Environmental Performance Index, India has always in the last couple of years just the ranks have deteriorated, then that is a false statement, because in 2020 ranking, the most recent one, the ranking has improved marginally for India. So therefore, as a general thing, you can say that how the ranks have deteriorated for India, and this shows how we have been performing poorly on the environmental front. So this you can quote in your answers, where you have to argue that our environmental protection regime is insufficient and we need to do more if we have to go towards sustainable or green development. So this was the only information that was relevant from the exam point of view in this whole article. Now we'll move on next, which is related to the economic growth. So this is a part of your GS3 syllabus, And in this article, it was just related to the contraction in the economy because of the COVID pandemic. So we will just have a look at some of the facts and figures as to how this COVID pandemic has led to a contraction in the economy. So first is related to the GDP. The GDP figures for the first quarter of 2020 shows that there has been a contraction of nearly 23.9%. So which you can safely say that the GDP has contracted by 24% in the first quarter of this year. So this is one important data which you can quote to support your answer how the COVID pandemic has had an impact on the economy in India. So the GDP in the first quarter has contracted by 24%. Apart from this, even the manufacturing has contracted. The manufacturing and the construction activities particularly has contracted by 50%. So the construction activity in the first quarter of this year has reduced by 50%. And when you talk of the manufacturing sector has collapsed by 39% in the first quarter of this year. Even the services means whether it is aviation, travel, tourism, communication, all of this definitely because of the pandemic and the social distancing and the limitations that have been put on travel and tourism, all of these service sectors have also now suffered. So this hotels, trade, transport, communication, the entire service sector has also declined by 47%. So in all this decline, there is one bright spot, which is the agriculture. Because the agriculture, there was no restrictions even during the lockdown, because the food are the essential commodities which need to be produced. So agriculture sector saw a growth of 3.4%, a positive growth of 3.4% during the first quarter of this year. So there are other reasons which explains the growth apart from the fact that there were no restrictions on agricultural activities. First is that the Rabi harvest was good. Second is that the monsoon was good. And third is that because of the good monsoon, there has been good sowing of the kharif crops as well. So due to these reasons, the agriculture sector growth has registered a growth rate of 3.4% in the first quarter of this year. So this data is not just helpful for you in the mains exam to support the fact that how the COVID has impacted the Indian economy, how it has led to a contraction in various sectors of the economy, right from the contraction in the GDP itself by 24%, how it has affected the manufacturing sector by 39%, services by 47%, and construction by 50%. But only agriculture has done well. And this is also important from the prelims point of view. So whenever there are multiple statements given, so in that you should know that agriculture has done well and the rest of the other sectors have not done well. So this is it for today. There wasn't much in today's newspaper. There was one article on the National Register of Citizens and in the Northeast, that the exercise which was going on. So I thought it is better to wait for some more time because whatever was going on, now the progress has been completely halted because of the pandemic. So let's see what call the government takes in the future, whether it will still continue, and then we will analyze the issues associated with it. For now, that issue can wait, also because your prelims is approaching and also because anything can happen to that initiative now and the government can even reverse it or take a different call on it in the future. So based on the future initiative by the government, we will discuss that issue in detail, but for now it can wait. So I'm not discussing that issue now. So there were other articles that were not really important from your exams point of view, or those articles on which we have already discussed in detail before, and there was nothing new or extra or additional in these articles. So now let's come to the prelims question that is based on current events. So you have to tell what is TriFood. So TriFood, first, what is it? What is the purpose or objective of this thing called as TriFood? Whose initiative is TriFood, and also who are the beneficiaries who are going to be benefited by this initiative of TriFood. So this is what you have to be telling. And yesterday, as many of you have rightly written about Sarathi, which is an Coast Guard offshore patrol vessel, and keep writing and keep revising. So that's it for today. And yes, today we have covered the newspaper of yesterday. So tomorrow we'll be covering the newspaper of today. So thank you. Have a good day.